All right, it is now 7:09 p.m. on Monday, May 18th, 2015, and I would like to call to order the regularly scheduled meeting of the Beloit City Council. Roll call, please.
5 councilors are Councilors Hendricks and Lubke absent.
All right, the next item is 2 is Pledge of Allegiance. Will you please stand?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. All right, item 3 is special orders of the day and announcements. Item 3A.
Wisconsin Law Enforcement Accreditation Group presentation.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce Chief Robert Roche from the Heartland Police Department, who is representing the Wisconsin Law Enforcement Accreditation Group.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to present. I promise to be quick because I know how these things kind of go. So, as introduced, my name is Bob Roche. I serve on the executive board for the Wisconsin Law Enforcement Accreditation Group, and one of the privileges of serving on that board is when we have our agencies, our law enforcement achieve accreditation, we get to go out to council meetings and that kind of stuff and make a public presentation, and we're very excited about doing that. Now, in the case with Beloit, they have actually dual accreditation because they have the CALIA accreditation, which they just went through this year as well. And then what we do is we recognize their accreditation from that group, but in addition, Wisconsin also has 43 additional standards that are specific to the state of Wisconsin law enforcement agencies that they have to show compliance with that. So we recognize their national accreditation, and then we also give them credit for those 43 standards that they have to achieve for Wisconsin. So some of the feedback that we had received from our assessor that came on site was that the Beloit Police Department has a significant amount of experience with the demands of accreditation, which is obvious. The department policies are very well written and in alignment with the widely required standards, and that the staff extended great cooperation when our assessor was on site reviewing all the documentation and the proofs that are necessary. So just so you kind of understand, when for the other agencies in Wisconsin, there's over 400 law enforcement agencies in Wisconsin. Only 3 have the dual accreditation. The City of Beloit is one of them, UW-Madison, Oshkosh PD. On the other side, we have Wisconsin law enforcement agencies that are accredited. Again, 400 agencies in the state, 25 have received full Y-League accreditation, and there's probably another 25 that are kind of in the process of achieving that accreditation as well. So it's very rare. It takes a lot of work, and I would be remiss not to recognize, I know Chief Jacobs will recognize, but Jillian, we make sure we go out of our way to recognize the accreditation managers because they are the backbone to the success of these programs, and they just do a tremendous job, and they're the ones that get all the sleepless nights and the phone calls and the emails, and it goes on and on. So so Beloit should be very proud of their police department. They live up to the industry standard that all law enforcement agencies should live up to. So having said that, I'd just like to read this plaque real quick to the chief. Be it hereby known that the City of Beloit Police Department has fully demonstrated its voluntary commitment to law enforcement excellence by its compliance to a body of standards deemed essential to the protection of the life, safety, and rights of the citizen it serves, and has exemplified the best professional practices in the conduct of its responsibilities, and therefore is hereby, upon the recommendation of the members of the governing board of the Wisconsin Law Enforcement Accreditation Group, awarded this certificate of accreditation effective the 4th day of May 2015, and is recognized as a Wisconsin accredited law enforcement agency for a period of 3 years. Signed, Greg Peterson, President of White League. Congratulations. Thank you.
On behalf of the department, I want to thank the council for their support, for allowing us to be YLEAG accredited. I think it's a great tribute to the officers and the community. And I want to pass this off to the person who did most of the work this year, Jillian Peterson.
Item 3B.
Introduction to Beloit Services Citizen Service Request Program.
Mr. Boyson.
I'm pleased to announce that earlier today, we have activated the Beloit Citizen Service Request Program. This system is now available to allow elected and appointed officials and citizens at large to report service requests directly to the operating departments or divisions that handle each request. Access to the system is available through the City of Beloit webpage, www.beloitwi.gov. Service requests can be filed directly from the city webpage. Also from the city webpage, iPhone and Android smartphone users can directly connect and download the free Beloit Services app from the App Store for Apple products or the Google Play for Android devices. Activation of the Beloit Services app system represents the achievement of a significant objective identified in the City of Beloit's 2015 strategic plan. I appreciate the involvement of the many public works staff who have worked on the system in addition to all of the other city department heads and their staffs who have enabled us to broaden the scope of service requests to involve all of their departments. Of course, 911 should still be used to report public safety emergencies, and any water and sewer type public works emergencies should also still call the response number of 608-364-2888. And Larry, we're going to show the webpage which guides you through the kind of the process that people can access the system.
Thanks, Greg. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to just try to quickly walk you through. I was going to fill one out, but we've got a lot of stuff on the agenda and got a bit of a late start. But if you go to the city's website, which hopefully you'll recognize up on your screen, you'll see in red right on the top there, first of all, a note pointing out about the Beloit services, your input matters. And there's an opportunity here again to fill out a service request. If you have an issue with the public infrastructure, a pothole, issue with snow removal, a parkway or a terrace tree, or other issues that you'd like to report, anything related to code enforcement or building code issues or zoning issues you'd like to report, you can use this form. You can also use it to communicate with the city council, use it to communicate with the city manager's office. I want to reiterate again what Greg just said. This form is for routine service requests and for making citizen complaints or making comments on other issues, including outstanding public policy issues that may be under consideration. It is not for emergency use. So if you have an emergency, by all means use 911. If it's a water or sewer emergency and the water is gushing or the basement is filling with sewage or something, do not use this form. Call the number so we can get help to you immediately. Once you get on the site, you'll see immediately I'm pointing to the request for service online. If you come down here, you'll see that you've got a map and you've also got an address block up here. I found that the easiest way to use this is actually to use the map, and I'm just going to show you quickly at home. If I zoom in and get a little bit closer here, I can zoom right in on downtown. And you can do that in any part of the city. And you can move your map around, of course, to get where you want to be. Now, I happen to be down on State Street here, and what I'm going to do is put the little cross there and click it, and as you'll note in just a second, the address is going to pop up, 100 State Street, which happens to be the City Hall. And then you go to the next step, and you'll see a screen come up. And the first thing, and I definitely want to cover this, is you can cover the type of service. If you hit this determines where this particular service request gets sent. So if you've got an abandoned vehicle, a problem with alleys, if you need animal services or building code enforcement, city landscaping issues, code enforcement, curb damage. You can see the list goes on and on. I think there's about 70 different items here. And so you'll find something here that covers your particular maintenance or service need. And the thing that's really important about this is it gets your request to the right office within city government immediately. So it doesn't have to go through channels. It isn't getting referred from one department to another, finally to another division, then to a work crew. It gets where it needs to be immediately, and of course you'll get confirmation. And what I'm going to do is just quickly click on City Manager Inquiries and Complaints, because I clicked 100 State Street. And then there's a place here where you can type in whatever you want to do. In this particular issue, I'm just sending a test message to my office, and then I'm going to quickly show you. You put in your name, it's real easy, last name, your email address, which mine happens to be Arptel, GOV, Beloit, and then you can put a phone number. I'm just going to hit a couple keys here to show you that we've got some on. Media upload, the bottom line is where you can put a photograph. As you'll see, if you download the app to your smartphone, it's a lot easier to use on the smartphone. But if you click Browse, you can go to a file. So if you take a picture of your problem, there's a big pothole out in the front of your driveway, take a picture of it and attach it. That'll really help them to find it. And then that's really all there is to it. You submit the report, and this thing's going to go out. And I'm not sure why.
I think it detected you didn't have enough digits in your phone number.
It's not like in my phone number here. Again, I'm just putting in some digits just to fill the blanks so that it'll work. And then you hit submit, and this thing will go. It's saving my report now. Your report has been saved. Thanks for making your community a better place. And again, this report is going on to wherever your particular service request needed to be directed, so it can be acted on by the city at the earliest possible date. And then you'll see coming up there what else is going on. You can also do other items. Here's a thing to communicate with the council if you had a policy matter, if you wanted to communicate with the city manager, finance, or administration. So if you need to file a second request, you can do that. If I can get back quickly to the home page, let me see if, yeah, here we go. I just wanted to point out one other thing is when you have your service request and from the home page, you click here to get to it. You'll see it right up on the top. That'll take you into the screen. And if you follow down to the bottom of the page, it says request service on your smartphone. So if you've got an iPhone or Android, come down here, download the app, and you'll have that with you in a portable way. It makes it really easy. Very easy to take and download photographs of whatever your issue is. So please jump on the city's website. Take a look at this new opportunity. We hope it will better serve the community, certainly make it easier and faster for residents to make their needs known to the city, and hopefully for us to respond to those needs. Greg, thank you. If councilors have any questions, we'll be happy to answer them. But
I just mentioned there's a free app, and if you go to Beloit Services, you can go to the App Store or the Google Play Store and look up Beloit Services. But if you have your cell phone and you just open up the city webpage, you click on it, it'll take you right there. That's probably the quickest and easiest way to get to it.
Thank you. All right. Item 4 is public hearings, which we have none. Item 5 is citizens' participation. And we have no sheets today, but we've reached the point of the meeting for the members of the public to speak to the council about issues that are coming before us or may come before us in the future. The council will not act on any requests this evening unless an item you are speaking about is already on our agenda, but we may act on requests at a future meeting or may refer to the speaker to staff for assistance. We ask that you hold your comments to 3 minutes or less and avoid making personal attacks. Do you have any individuals wishing to come forward and speak under citizens' participation? Second call for persons to come forward and speak under citizens' participation. Third and final call for persons to come forward and speak under citizens' participation. Hearing none, I'll close the citizens' participation part of the agenda, and we'll move on to the consent agenda, item 6. All items listed under the consent agenda are considered routine and will be enacted. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a council member so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the general order of business and considered at this point on the agenda. Do we have anyone wishing to remove something from the consent agenda? Councilor DeForest.
Thank you. I'd like to request that item D as in dog be removed, please.
All right, do we have any other items that councilors wish to remove from the consent agenda? Hearing none, the consent agenda consists of items 6A through 6C. Do I have a motion for approval?
So moved. Second.
Moved by DeForest, second by Kelly. All in favor of approval of the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Consent agenda passes 5-0. Item 6D.
Resolution awarding Public Works contract C-1507, street resurfacing.
Mr. Boyson.
This project will overlay rough pavement in 34 blocks of city streets. One bid was received for the project. The low bid of $655,271.60 was received from Rock Road Companies and was 2.4% more than the engineer's estimate of $639,906.39. Rock Road Companies is considered a responsible bidder for this project, including $97,728.40 for change orders and extra work. The total cost for the project is budgeted for $753,000. Award of the contract to Rock Road Companies in the amount of their bid of $655,271.60 is recommended. Funding is available in the 2015 Capital Improvement Plan.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to approve 6D so we can get it on the table?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by DeForest, second by Kincaid. And do you have a question, Sheila?
Thank you. Mr. Boyson, I always get a little nervous when there's only one bidder for a project this large. Can you speak to why there's only one bid on this?
This is really quite common here in this area of Wisconsin, and many of the areas of Wisconsin, and talking to some of my counterparts, that the Rock Road Companies, they're a very well-known and a respected company and very accomplished. There's really no question of their ability to do the work. We do review their bids and make sure that everything seems to be appropriate. We're following all the bidding procedures, but that is really just the case here in many of the areas around Rock County and the surrounding counties, that that's very common, that one of the prevailing contractors, based on his positioning and his in-area facilities and location, is very competitive to the point where, well, I guess I don't really know why, but it seems that they're very competitive, and others just find it not cost-effective to engage in the efforts, since they cannot beat them, typically, is our impression.
Okay, because we've seen other street resurfacing where we've had other bidders in the past.
On resurfacings of a larger nature, I don't know that we've had any in quite some time. There was one company that ceased to function in our area, but in some time now, this seems to be very common in talking to the Rock County Public Works Director and Janesville Public Works Director. I think everyone is sort of just acquiesced to the fact that we really have no strong competitors, to the point where it's apparently not in their cost effective for them to even expend the time to thoroughly bid these projects.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to be sure.
I throw a comment. I do, in situations like this, worry about market allocation violations. That can happen in these sort of situations, but that would be beyond our purview to detect. I quite agree. All right. If we have any other further questions or comments on item 6D? Hearing none, I'll call the matter. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item passes 5-0. Item 7, ordinances, 7A.
Proposed ordinance to add no parking between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. Regulations in the Heritage View parking lot.
Mr. Boyson.
The city staff received a request from Ginger Minders on behalf of Hendricks Commercial Properties to restrict overnight parking from the Heritage View, in front of the Heritage View building. After discussions between the city traffic engineering staff, the city attorney, and Ms. Minders, it was decided that a restriction of parking between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. would allow for the parking needs of current tenants while restricting overnight parking. The Traffic Review Committee reviewed the issue during their April 27, 2015 meeting, and the committee voted 5-0 in favor of restricting the parking between the recommended 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. for the stalls located immediately in front of the first floor storefronts. The engineering division also recommends this parking restriction, which would be similar to the restrictions currently posted in the downtown area.
All right, thank you. Do we have a motion to approve item 7A? Or, excuse me, we are looking for a first reading, suspend the rules for a second reading. Do we have a motion to suspend the rules?
I'll move to suspend the rules.
Moved by DeForest, second by Sloniker. Councilor DeForest.
Oh, this isn't related to suspending the rules?
Yes.
Would you like me to wait?
Well, if your question's pertinent to suspending the rules.
No, it's not.
Okay, all right then. Anybody else want to discuss suspending the rules? All right then, all in favor of suspending the rules, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We have suspended the rules by a vote of 5-0. Do we have a motion for approval?
I'll move on the underlying merits.
Second?
Councilor DeForest, motion, second by Kelly. And you have a comment or question?
Yes, thank you. Since this parking ownership was decided before I've been on council for 7 years now, I want a little more clarification about why we own this parking lot and why we're maintaining it.
And I know, Larry, you and Sheila exchanged emails.
I'd be happy to answer that question, because this project, the other improvements in the city center, most of the economic development projects in the Gateway Business Park were done as public-private partnerships. The city has been very aggressive at working with local entrepreneurs, developers, and new businesses to bring them to the city of Beloit and to make improvements to the city of Beloit, and we've partnered on a lot of these development projects. In this particular case, the only thing the city put up was the parking lot. We owned the lot further to the north, was a municipal lot, and basically we attached and extended that down in front of Heritage View. But that has always been a public parking lot, as are a number of parking lots in the Ironworks campus along 3rd Street. The parking lot by ABC headquarters, that's a public parking lot, as that was provided by the city as an incentive to get the development into the city center.
All right, so I'll have to respect previous counselors who decided that that was worth the resource investment. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions or comments on item 7A? Hearing none, I'll call the matter. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Item passes 5-0. Item 8 is appointments. Do we have an appointment sheet?
I have one.
For some reason I'm locked out of the shared drive tonight.
That was two.
Okay, so I, the undersigned Charles Haynes, duly elected president of the Beloit City Council, subject to confirmation by the Beloit City Council, does hereby appoint the following citizen members to the vacancies and terms indicated below, said appointments being pursuant to nominations made and approved by the Appointment Review Committee at the regularly scheduled meeting held May 11th, 2015. We have one appointment, that is to the Board of Appeals, incumbent Gregory D. Gall for a regular term ending May 31st, 2018. Do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Moved by Kincaid and seconded by Sloniker. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll call the matter. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Item passes by a vote of 5-0. I'd like to announce the following vacancies. We have one vacancy for resident for the Alcohol Beverage Licensing Control Committee. We have one vacancy for resident in the Appointment Review Committee. The Board of Appeals has two vacancies for alternate residents. Board of Ethics is one vacancy for former city councilors, three vacancies for residents. Board of Review has one vacancy for resident, two vacancies alternate for residents. Community Development Authority has one vacancy for resident. The Equal Opportunity Commission has two vacancies for residents. Municipal Golf Committee has one vacancy for a resident. Parks and Recreation Conservation Advisory Commission has one vacancy for a youth representative. And the Traffic Review Committee has two vacancies for residents. If you'd like to serve your community, I can think of no better way to get involved than to serve on one of the committees. Call the city manager's office or the city clerk for more information. As councilor activities and upcoming events, let's go ahead and get started with Councilor Sloniker. Well, to get you turned on.
Okay. I attended Neighborhood Watch, the POG that meets at New Life Ministries. They did say that the substation is helpful for the Merrill community, and residents are concerned about the upcoming 4th of July fireworks issues. I attended the Government 101. I learned quite a bit, which was very helpful. Met some people from the surrounding areas. I attended the Stop the Violence event at Summit Park on Saturday that was put on by New Life Ministries. There was a good turnout of people. And I also got to tour the engineering building and got to learn about SLATs and the MPO, which is the State Line Area Transportation Study and the Metropolitan Planning Organization.
Thank you. And Councilor Kelly.
Well, I almost had nothing to report, but I remember that I went to the State Line Community Foundation Scholarship Luncheon, and my son was one of the proud recipients this year. So I go every year, and it was much better this year because he was actually getting something. I've been out of town most of the week, so this is it for me.
All right. Councilor Kincaid.
I'm happy to report that I have gone to the last 2 farmers market meetings. I learned that this is the 50th year in operation. Some of us may not have known that. 85 vendors, no pets.
You had to bring that up.
It was a wonderful occasion, and there are more vendors coming out every week as spring progresses into the summer. So be sure to check it out. It's very worthwhile. Secondly, the Art Walk was on the 15th. Once again, this is the 13th annual Art Walk. I was at the 3rd, I think, the first time I moved to Beloit. They are great. This time we had art through many of the local businesses, some entertainment, some people were playing their musical instruments and refreshments, and all the restaurants downtown were very, very busy. So we, again, this was another annual thing, which is very important, I think, to all of us. The Rock River Symphony, they call it the Rock River Philharmonic, had an unusual event this last week. They had in the Hendricks, were you over there? No. It was over on the other side of the river in a part of the building on the campus, which isn't really quite finished. There are 3 or 4 members of the symphony who gave solos. They had a DJ who mixed the solos, and so they were virtually unrecognizable, and we were all entertained by that. And then I want you to know about this, that there were spray painting by a resident graffiti artist, and I didn't know there were such people doing this sort of thing without getting arrested. And so it was, all in all, it was a very good program, and I would urge that you consider looking at some of the other symphony programs a little more regular, but this was a lot of fun in any event. That's the last of my adventures so far.
Good, thank you. Madam Vice President.
Thank you. Well, first I'd like to welcome everyone here tonight. I'm sorry that we got down here late and I wasn't able to personally welcome you. I'm especially glad to see so many students here, and I hope that you did. There is a vacancy for a youth representative on the Parks, Recreation, and Conservation Advisory Committee, which I'm a member of, and I would be happy to pick you up myself and take you to those meetings. So hopefully you'll consider signing up for that. And you have any questions, there's a form over there that you can grab, and I would be happy to help you fill out the form even. So, or if you have a friend that you think might be interested. I see some smiles up there, so maybe there's talk about it, which is wonderful. I wanted to announce that Beloit Memorial High School Jazz Band will be performing this Friday at Friday in the Park, so I'm excited about that, to go listen to them. And one of the highlights of my past 2 weeks was going to the farmers market this past Saturday, and I'd like to thank all of the DPW staff that were there showing off our trucks and equipment. The kids were having a blast climbing up into the trucks and getting to know our staff, and they had some wonderful things they were passing out. I got a really cool squeezy ball. It was really fun seeing the delight on the kids' faces, and it was a great educational opportunity as well for the public to get a better sense of all of the many facets of what the city does to take care of all of our infrastructure needs in the city. So I want to thank all the staff that gave up their time on a Saturday to be there. And I wanted to announce that for EMS week, there is an open house May 23rd, so that's coming up. Beloit fire paramedics will be there, and they will again have lots of really cool stuff for kids to look at. The med flight helicopter will be there, and it will be at the fire station on Church Street Saturday from 10 to 2. So just wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of that. We'd love to see you out there. I certainly will be out there to check it out. So wanted to make sure you were aware of that as well. And then finally, I just wanted to, I was remiss in not officially welcoming fellow Councilor Sloniker, and we're just thrilled to have you. And I'm so grateful that you've already taken the initiative to tour many of the facilities and get to learn more about your role. So thank you for taking your seriously, and I really look forward to working with you.
All right, and in the interest of brevity, I'll add nothing tonight. So, item 10 is City Manager's presentation, item 10A.
Code enforcement presentation.
Downing.
I know sometimes you can't hear me, so just yell at me if you can't hear me. You can hear me? Okay.
There you go.
Good evening, everyone. I come to council meetings. I don't know if Marilyn knows this, but I do this presentation every year, so it has a lot of the same information that some of you already know. There's been some changes in the last year, and Marilyn, if you have any questions, just make sure that you stop me. This is the very last slide. That's the last slide. Yep. That's the last slide.
Now, I guess that would explain.
There we go. For those in the audience who don't know me, I'm Terry Downing. I'm the Director of Community and Housing Services, which is over the Code Enforcement Program, along with the Housing Loan Program, Fair Housing, Community Development, Grants, and I'm missing something, but that's okay.
Housing rehab program.
And Housing Rehab Program. The Code Enforcement Program has three components. There is an interior systematic rental inspections, interior multifamily rental inspections, and exterior citywide code enforcement. In 2014, we had one full-time inspector do the interior fire systematics for multifamily, and we had 4.5 inspectors doing the interior systematics and exterior citywide code enforcement. You'll see on the chart up here, this is what we have this year. Our full-time inspector for fire systematics also does the duplex properties this year, and she has also taken on some of the single-family properties. And then in 2015, we made that half-time position back to full-time, and so we have 5 full-time inspectors doing both interior systematics and exterior citywide code enforcement. We also have an inspector at the Housing Authority that does just the Section 8 properties and the public housing units. The rental units in the city of Beloit, we have currently 6,653 rental units. The bulk of those are single-family properties, which you'll see on the right-hand side in the blue. The other large piece of the pie is the multifamily units that we have in the city, and the rest are the other duplex, threeplex, and fourplex units. The interior systematic rental inspection program, the way that works is that all buildings containing 1 or 2 rental units are scheduled for an interior inspection on a 3-year cycle. All buildings containing 3 or more rental units are scheduled for an interior fire inspection on an annual or biannual basis for common areas, but individual units are also inspected on a 3-year cycle. The Section 8 and public housing rental units are inspected on an annual basis by the Housing Authority. When the inspectors schedule an interior rental inspection, they send out a letter and they send this checklist out to the owner. We started this last year because some of the landlords had said, sometimes we don't know what you're looking for, so we developed this checklist and we send this out with the letters, and what this does is allows property owners to prepare for the inspection ahead of time, because our goal is compliance. We want them to be in compliance, and it also minimizes the violations and reduces the number of inspections, because with the limited staff, we were getting behind in our interior inspections and we were having to go back out 2, 3, 4 times for these properties. So, on a typical systematic inspection, this is just some of the things that we look for when we're inside the properties. We look for working smokes and carbons. Smoke and carbon detectors on each floor, the condition of stairs and presence of handrails, sanitation including presence of rodents, insects and vermin, the condition of all interior surfaces. We make sure there's heating facilities in all habitable rooms, that the windows are openable in all bedrooms, there's light switches in all habitable rooms. We check for dangerous electrical issues, exits and entrances can't be blocked, stairwells must be well lit, not blocked, and the door to the unit must be lockable with a key from the outside. The multifamily residential inspections are a little bit different in that the buildings containing 3 or more rental properties require a fire inspection. Now, there's 2 different kinds of fire inspections, and these are done in just the common areas. So on an annual basis, the common areas of buildings that are fully sprinklered and buildings that have their own individual entrances are inspected, just the common areas. And then twice a year, common areas of buildings that are not sprinklered and or partially sprinklered, those are inspected twice a year. And then our fire inspector goes into each individual unit on a 3-year cycle. And currently, as shown in the other slide, we have about 2,300 multifamily units in the city. So the multifamily residential inspections, the fire inspections for the common areas, what's looked for are functioning exit and emergency exits. She checks the fire extinguishers to make sure that they haven't expired, that the tags are up to date. She checks the sprinkler heads, the sprinkler maintenance reports. She checks for illegal extension cords. She checks for storage of flammable and combustible items. She makes sure the pull alarms are being tested once a month, makes sure fire doors are functioning, and that apartments are numbered. And then the private units go through the same inspection as the single family and the duplexes in that list that I showed you a few slides ago. So here's some pictures of some code violations. So just some examples of what we see. This is a sanitation issue, obviously on the right, upper right. Wall and ceiling damage, we see that quite a bit, and then broken windows. And the one on the upper left, I'm going to zoom in, hopefully it'll work. There it goes. There's a hole in the ceiling that's been leaking, and the way that this was repaired was a magazine was put up and taped to cover the hole. Some examples of interior code violations, items on top of the stove like that microwave there, overloaded circuits and electrical hazards. On the left-hand side, those 2 are electrical hazards. The one with the circle is that light is just hanging by one live wire, but the other wires are kind of out. And then the top one, that is a live socket that you would put a light bulb in, and there was electricity running through that, and it's hanging by the live wire, and then the resident decided to hang their bag there, which so our fire inspector said, you might want to remove that bag, and then educated the resident on why that would not be a good idea. So here's some more examples of electrical hazards. No outlet covers, they look for that because children can stick their fingers in there, or something could get in there and there could be a fire that started, or somebody could get zapped. Numerous extension cords like you see on the left, extension cords plugged into power strips like you see on the left. And then the picture on the lower right, what that is a regular light in a shower with a pull chain. So that is an electrical hazard, and that was ordered to be removed. Examples of properties or things that would be where we would have to post a unit unfit for human habitation. Some examples are hoarding situations, which is what the upper left picture is of. The lower left picture is what you think it is, unsanitary or unsafe conditions, and then lack of basic facilities. So that means if they don't have water, they can't flush their toilet, they can't take a shower, that kind of thing, we would post that unfit. The lower right-hand picture is a stairway, and it's just filled with items and debris. In 2014, we posted 45 units unfit for human habitation. That does not include 920 Park because we posted some of those units in 2013 and some in the January of 2014. That was an additional 36 units. And then we've posted 25 units so far this year in 2015 unfit for human habitation, mostly for sanitary issues. Some examples of other violations. I haven't done this in years past, but I want everybody to know that everything doesn't fit in the box a little, on the checklist, that we come across things that are a little different. So I have a couple pictures here. This is a picture of the inspectors when they go inside of a unit. They go in the basement and they look at the water heater, the furnace, make sure things are vented properly, the pilot light is on, there's nothing near the pilot light, etc. When the inspector went down in this particular property, they could not find the furnace or the water heater. So when she asked the owner where it was fully enclosed in drywall. There was no door, there was no way to even get into that area. So this is actually the after picture of she had to order the owner to open that up, so he had to cut the drywall out. So that was a major safety issue, so that was ordered to be done immediately. This picture is of it's in an efficiency apartment in one of the major apartment buildings in the city, and the purple walls that you see are actually plywood, and so this is an efficiency apartment. I think it had one bedroom, and they decided to erect this plywood with that little door that was about this high, and there was a bed in there, and a child was sleeping inside that little room. So that was ordered to be removed. And the management wasn't aware that that was that way. I'm not sure if that light didn't work or if they just didn't want to change the bulb, but what that is a clip with a light bulb that's clipped onto that light fixture. And then the last one here is this is a tent that was outside of property that was being lived in, and I don't know if the kids were using it or if the family liked to go out there at times, but the issue with this tent was that there was a space heater and a wood-burning stove in the tent. I don't know if you can see the chimney that they poked through the hole of the tent, so I'm sure the fire chief would agree that that would be a safety issue. So that was ordered to be removed. So how do inspectors locate violations? We locate them by routine observation, complaints, referrals from other city departments, systematic interior rental inspections. We have 5 code enforcement areas, citywide code enforcement areas. As I mentioned before, we have instead of a part-time inspector, we made that to full-time again. We were able to use CDBG funding for that half-time position because we needed some extra help in our low to moderate income areas, our most deteriorated areas in the city. So that inspector has the blue area there, which is the smallest area of the city, and then that inspector provides backup for the other 3 inspectors that have the low to moderate income areas. So we're not missing anything. She also is afloat, so when other inspectors are on vacation, she covers the area for that inspector, or if they're sick or something like that. Because we were running into some issues where somebody would be gone and there wouldn't really be anybody that could go out. When an inspector identifies a code violation, a letter is sent out with a time frame to comply. All complaints and citations are entered into our Munis code module, and then inspectors will work with property owners upon request to approve reasonable extensions for non-safety type issues. This is a listing of what the fines are if somebody doesn't respond to a code violation, either by bringing their issue into compliance or contacting the inspector, they could receive a fine. And these go up. First offense is $187, second offense is $313, third offense is $439, and the last and subsequent offense, or the fourth and subsequent offenses are $691. We did implement reinspection fees last year for no smokes and no carbons, $50 for the first reinspection, and then a $75 reinspection fee for second and subsequent reinspections. What we did notice is in the beginning of the year, we were having a lot of these fees, and towards the end of the year we had less fees, and that was the goal. And we were trying to get so they had the property in compliance by the time the inspector got there. So I believe that it's worked. We still have some issues. We had well, I used to have it in my head. We had 87 violations for no smokes and no carbons last year. So some examples of violations to be corrected immediately are electrical hazards, like you see on the left there, motor vehicles parked and stored on the grass, and then bulky appliances stored on a property. So like a refrigerator or stove or a water heater was out on a terrace one day, that kind of thing. Examples of violations to be corrected in 5 to 7 days are things like solid waste, graffiti, and unregistered, unlicensed junk motor vehicles. That graffiti says, we can plant a house. I don't know what that means. It's been yeah, nobody knows what that means, so. More examples of code violations to be corrected in 5 to 7 days are tall weeds and grass, snow that hasn't been removed, and trash and debris. Examples of violations to be corrected in 30 days are things like interior repairs, including electrical and plumbing, screens and storm windows, dead trees, interior sanitation issues. Unless the property is posted unfit, then usually if it's posted unfit, the family has to be out within 24 to 48 hours because it's a safety issue. But they will give them time to, fix the issue. And then interior peeling paint. Examples of violations to be corrected in 60 days, exterior painting, large property maintenance projects, driveways, and roof replacement and repair. And then examples of violations to be corrected in 120 days are major property maintenance issues, like the picture on the left. And then, I don't know if you can see it from where you're sitting, but that roof is wavy, kind of looks like water. So that's probably a bigger issue than just replacing the roof. The roof shingles probably have some underlayment to be replaced. So for 2014, this is a snapshot of the parcels that were inspected, the number of units and the number of inspections. It's a little difficult to pull these numbers out of Munis. We enter everything in there, but it's, for example, when we pull up the inspections, it only pulls up the parcels but not the unit numbers. So we have to manually go in and match and hand, put. So this is I did my best to do my best estimate on the number of housing units that were inspected, so. And then the multifamily interior, under housing units inspected, it only tracks it by buildings for the inspections. So that's 205 buildings, and that could be buildings from 3 unit up to, 80 units. So it's just difficult to pull those out. So we did a total of 8,501 inspections. Now those inspections, 6,276 violations resulted from those inspections. Only 447 citations were issued, though, after those violations, and then 244 additional citations were issued for renting without a rental permit. I should say that the exterior, it says 2,419, but really every parcel in the city is inspected. Ones that don't have issues, we don't enter into the system. So they're all inspected, so what you're seeing there are just the ones that had a violation that ended up being entered into or there was a complaint. And that's all I have. If you have any questions, I can answer.
Councillor Kelly.
So I have a question on the fines. So the first fine, is it a fine, it could be for something else, or it has to be for the same thing again? So if they get fined for having too grass, and then the next time they have a junk car, is that
For the same issue.
for the same issue?
Yeah, same or related issues.
There you go.
Whatever the code section is that's violated, that has to be a repetitive one before the second offense will kick in. So if you have a long weeds and grass ticket, and then you are followed up with, let's say, a junk car, something like that, that would be $187 a piece for each violation.
Okay.
If there was a second violation of junk vehicle, then it jumps to the next
I
offense.
didn't know if it was, okay, so now you've got 2 violations, therefore your second violation is going to be twice.
For the same.
Yeah, the easiest way we
Not the
found
same thing,
for the court to keep track of it is by statute number, by ordinance number.
Okay. I don't need to do that, never mind.
Is it,
I'm plugging.
okay. Right, Councillor DeForest.
Thank you. First of all, Terry, thank you for working so closely with the landlords. I really appreciate the work that you've done with them to be collaborative. It means a lot. I'm really pleased with the checklist that was developed. It makes so much sense. It's a win-win for the landlords and for the city, so we all know we're on the same page. One thing I know the Beloit Property Managers Association had talked about was proposing decreasing the frequency of inspections for rental properties that you're not having any issues with. Is that something you guys have talked about and are considering?
We continue to talk about that. The issue that I think I mentioned last year is there's no good way in our system to kind of grade or keep track of those we could keep track of those with no violations, but then what about the one that just had the one little violation that,
Like the grass or?
Yeah, or a burnt out light bulb, because if it's just something like that, we shouldn't be doing that. But I agree with you. I think we should reward the landlords that are doing a good job in keeping their properties maintained, and I agree that it's a better use of our time to concentrate more on the issues in the city that we're seeing on the exterior, and then the problem properties that we're seeing. And we are working, we talk about it all the time, we are working to try to develop a system to...
Okay.
We just haven't gotten there yet.
Okay, good, but we're working on it.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it sounds like it's mostly just a limitation of the Munis system database that we're using?
Well, that's one of the, that's our only tracking mechanism, so just trying to get that to work with us. I have talked to Ray, our IT director, and we've talked about having Munis come in and show us different tips and tricks in the Munis system to be able to get the best out of it, because
Okay.
I'm not sure we're using it to its full capacity.
Okay,
So that's my hope, is that we can, because there is a grading system, we just can't figure out how to use it.
okay, great. So Ray's suggestion is a good one, that's
Yes.
great, for a filter we can use. Are we sending out rehab loan information with violation letters routinely?
Yes,
Okay.
we are.
Great. And then, the last thing I wanted to ask, I guess I'm surprised by the 244 citations for renting without rental permits. Has that been pretty a persistent number consistently? I mean, from year to year, or?
This
I
is
just have
actually
missed it
down
before?
from previous years.
Really?
It's down from previous years because, well, I have my own theory, but last year, we used to send, a reminder letter, and then another reminder letter, and then another reminder letter, and, and by the time we get into, they're due on March 1st, and now we're getting into June and July and August, and what would happen is, with all these reminders, people knew that, we'd be back into the rental permit season again, and then our administrative assistant that runs the program wouldn't have time to issue all the tickets. So what we did last year is they get one reminder, and then it's not their first rodeo for most of the landlords. They get cited if they don't have the ticket or they don't have their permit. So that's what we did in 2013. We did that in 2013, and we saw a drop in the number of citations in 2014.
Okay, and what's the fine on that? What's the violation?
187.
187?
Yeah, and if they continue to rent without a rental permit, it's a violation each day.
Each day?
Yes, each day they rent without a rental permit. Yeah, we don't issue tickets every day, just because we don't have the manpower, but, probably once every couple weeks.
Usually it's once a month.
Once a month, yeah.
Okay.
And then it goes up, to the 313, and then,
And I know we don't have much teeth. All we can do is keep finding people. Are we finding that they're chronic abusers and we don't really have much so we can leverage or hold over their heads, or?
We see chronic abusers, and there are some property owners that get cited every year a number of times. We're seeing a decrease, though.
From my perspective in court, we are seeing a much of a decrease in the chronic offenders. I think the putting down of the foot in 2013 certainly helped send the message that we're wasting time by continuing to send warning letters out. The landlords that get the multiple tickets, they generally have excuses that they didn't remember and things like that. So our goal is for compliance. So we work with them to make sure they get the permit, and we try to get them to cooperate sooner rather than later. But the threat of fines and the individual fines themselves do prompt many of the landlords to get the permit.
And that way, same playing field. And I just wanted to double check, because I have to ask every year, are all of our inspectors being consistent in terms of being reasonable and working with landowners, property owners about extensions?
I think we are. We've had a little bit of turnover, so we have some new inspectors who I think are working out wonderfully. Okay. And we continuing our monthly staff meetings with code inspectors, so everybody's on the same page. It kind of comes up, things kind of bubble to the surface, and so like a similar situation will come to me maybe 3 or 4 times in the same week, and I'll go, this is what we talk about. And so then we talk about that in the staff meeting, and I get everybody's perspective. Part of the issue for me is I don't know the history of how have we handled this in the past, so thankfully we have our lead inspector now, Steve. He's very, very good. He has the code in his brain. He has 20-some years of history. And we're able to kind of, flesh out some of the inconsistencies, and then a lot of times I follow up with a written internal guidance, so they have something to refer back to. In fact, I just forwarded something to you. You probably haven't seen it, for her review on consistent ways that we're writing citations, because there's so many different kind of strange things that come up. Foreclosure properties, deceased people, things that are in probate. Things like that the inspectors really have trouble with finding out. Like, what do we do in these situations? So from consistency to consistency in writing a citation, so the court doesn't have to deal with correcting them later. We're dealing with all of those issues, and I think it's gotten better. I don't know if you've heard less complaints, but I believe it's gotten better. But if you have a complaint, let me know, and then we can make sure that we address it.
Great. Thanks, Terry.
Councillor Kincaid.
I was looking at your system of inspections. 1 and 2 units are scheduled for interior inspections every 3 years. Multifamily units, 3 and above, get interior inspections every 3 years, and every 2 years fire and inspection and so forth. I don't know much about inspections, but it seems like a 3-year run is kind of a long time to go back and take a look. They could have, some places could have 2 or 3 tenants in that time. Is that for the business, so to speak, or is that something that is influenced more by capacity, budget, and all those other things?
Well, I think it's influenced by capacity, and this ordinance was passed in
In the early 90s, I believe.
In the early 90s, 94. So I think it has to do with capacity. Our rental units have gone up since then.
Number of units have gone up, yes.
But to be honest, it's all over the board. We have exactly what you're talking about, where in 3 years, something passes, and then after 3 years, you go back in here and go, I can't believe anybody ever lived in this place before, you know. But then on the other hand, we have some property owners who maintain their properties, and they pass every time on the first try. So it's kind of all over the board. And that's why I like the idea of kind of grading them so we can have a staggered way of doing these inspections. And I think that would create a positive reinforcement for these property owners to take care of their properties.
I have the notion that in the department, it isn't probably in many in the city, that the data entry, which you have enormous amounts of it, I have to believe, it's pretty much one piece of paper at a time, or do you have, is that fair?
I'm not sure I understand your question, but...
I guess the real question is, to what extent are you able to have your code inspections be supported by software for inspecting buildings, for tracking issues, and being able to circle back and get them?
That's one of my dreams, if you want to call it a dream. But one of the things that the Munis system does is an app that you can put on a phone and go in and do all of your inspections. Right now we have an inspection checklist for interior inspections. Then we have the pictures, and that doubles as the report. Same with the exterior inspections. There's a report, and they have to attach their pictures, and then the letter goes on top, and and then our files, also the capacity for all the files is an issue too. So there is a mobile app, but we're not able to use it yet because it has to be upgraded to 8.1, is that what it is? 8.1, which will be upgraded to that by August, I believe. We already have one employee who has that on their personal cell phone, so we can try it. But we're waiting for that upgrade to be able to, and then IT will give that person access to the Munis system to play around with the checklist and how that all works. So, yeah, what I would like to have is, because the inspectors all have phones, but they have the little flip phones, is either have a little tablet or a phone where they can do the pictures, the checklist, everything right on their phone, and then it's right into the system, and then all they have to do is print out their letters. I don't know how realistic that is, but that's what I'm working towards.
There may be instances where a inspector might spend half of the day out in the field and the other half day working on the paperwork.
That's actually what does happen.
Yeah. I know that a lot of departments don't work like that. They are able to keep the guy out or the woman out all day and plug in the information and come back and maybe do one inspection a year, or one every 2 years instead of one every 3 years.
Yeah.
So it's a challenge. Maybe we need to think about a cost-benefit analysis to see how we can. I know that's not your, that's one we can dream about, but hopefully work on. But I guess what draws me to this is that I know your staff works very, very hard, and but the actual number of inspections that you're able to accomplish seems to be highly limited, in my view. Call me wrong, but...
Yeah, if there were less paperwork, we could do more out in the community, for sure.
Thank you.
Councilor DeForest, you had something additional?
Yes, thank you. So one quick question. I know there was a time when we talked about having one file for each property in the city. I mean, are we closer to getting to that point where all of the...
We do have that.
We do have that, okay.
Yep, there's a file on third floor, right in the middle. There's rows of files, and those are all property files, and it has all of the all of the...
Electronically accessible though, because that's what we need.
No, it's
Oh.
not electronically
We need an
accessible.
electronic file on each.
We did have
budget.
Laserfiche, which I worked with IT when I first was put into this position, because we had stacks and stacks of paperwork on top of the files that weren't going into the files. We were having problems with open records requests and finding that documentation later, because we were years and years behind in putting that into Laserfiche, because and then once we put it in, we weren't able to search it. So I made the call to stop doing that so we could get everything into the files and then look at a later date on a better way of putting all these into an electronic system.
We should be able just to scan them and have one electronic file on each property. I know we keep talking about that.
I think the problem with that, I was here when we had talked about that, and the problem we had was staffing. The time it takes to scan all of those things and get them in with the volume of paperwork that floor has, they simply didn't have the administrative support to be able to do that. So I think we ran into a lot of problems with access to documents for
And then we
court.
still had to keep the paper copies.
Right.
Legally, we do.
Well, until we were comfortable with our system, and I'm glad we didn't get rid of those paper copies because we ran into problems. So I think there's probably some softwares out there, some consultants that do some back scanning, but right now we just don't have the staff.
My
to
hope
do
is that after this recession, eventually if there's money in the budget, that we could do kind of one fell swoop and get everything in electronically. I know that's down the road. It would have to be a project that's planned for, and but we want to do it the right way and not just kind of halfway. And if we had taken the time or hired a temp to do all of that, we wouldn't have been able to search it anyway. And we did work with IT, and I can't remember, I think it was Cole, took a stack that we had, one stack, and it took him like 3 days, just himself, just to do just that stack, and that's about how much we get every day. So it's it's a task.
Okay.
But it would help if we had the...
If it was already in there, you won't have to scan anything in.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Councilor Kincaid, did you have something additional?
I do. It goes to my point that I know there's data for each individual dwelling unit, but if it's in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of files and dozens of file drawers, it really doesn't, it's nice to know they're there, I suppose, if we have the time and inclination and necessity to recover them.
Well, they're easy to access because they're by address.
It is easy, okay.
And there's a property file per parcel. So it's not per unit, it's per parcel. And it's filed by address. So we can find them. We have people come in and look for open records requests. We have city attorney's office come down and, to research our times, or people who want to buy properties, they come in and look at the file and that kind of thing. One thing that people should know is they can come to the third floor and look at a property file at any time. They just have to give us enough time to redact any information that needs to be redacted, because we do get some confidential information from CPS and things like that. So it's best to call first, but yeah.
No, that's your precious time that you could be out inspecting buildings.
Right. Yeah.
Well, it would seem that we're talking about enormous amounts of money, but it seems to me that we need to try to understand a little more cost-benefit about it, because there are a lot of things that can't be accomplished as they need to be, it seems. Thank you. Yeah, so I have no more.
Thanks. Well, do we have any other questions or comments? Hearing none, well, thank you very much.
Thank you. If I may, I know that this may be a little bit inappropriate, but I'm not going to see Larry at another council meeting, so I know this is his last sitting council meeting. He's not paying attention. But I just want to thank you, Larry, for your support of the code enforcement program, the support of the housing loan program, and then your support of me in my professional capacity. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to item 11, reports from boards and city officers, 11A.
Resolution authorizing the 422 Bluff Street, 310 Euclid project.
Madam Director.
Okay, so it feels like I've been doing 422 Bluff Street, 310 Euclid forever and not getting anything accomplished. But anyway, so that's what this item is. Okay, so 422 Bluff Street is the property on the corner of Euclid and Bluff Street. It contains two houses, 422 Bluff Street, which is a reddish-colored house and was divided into to become a 3-unit, and then 310 Euclid, which is the one further to the west, which is a single-family house. These are some photographs, which are a year old, of 422 Bluff Street. It was built in the late 1800s. It was a gorgeous house at one time. It has two separate front porches. At one point in its history, it was carved up into 3 units. It has one 2-story unit and then 2 smaller units, which were declared unfit over a period of years through the code enforcement program. And then 310 Euclid has always been a single-family house. It was built on the same lot as 422 Bluff, probably within 40 years of when 422 Bluff was built. So it is in the historic district in its own right, has a more simpler porch and more simpler design. Okay, so in 2013, we picked it up as part of the Rock County tax foreclosure sale, and I was the one who wanted to buy it, so it is my fault. I fell in love with this house years ago. I thought it was gorgeous. I thought it was something that we could really do something with. When we first went inside of it, I was very sad, and then we took Larry into it, and Larry wised me up immediately that it was probably a very expensive rehab. So we brought in Jim Height, who's a structural engineer, to evaluate the house, and he did note that the one corner, actually, you can see right through. The foundation is so weak, which was from water. There was some leakage, and water ran all the way down the north side of the house, and as a result is all bowed out. So after we got the report, I went to Landmarks Commission to just kind of discuss informally tearing down both houses and doing new construction, which I was strongly discouraged that they would prefer I not go that route. And they actually offered is there a possibility that we could tear down 422 Bluff and move 310 Euclid? And so we started down that path, and then we had some CDBG money that wasn't being spent, and so I made the request to take some of the money to demolish 422 Bluff Street. And then in April, I met, as we started as staff going through this process, the city manager felt pretty strongly, and we concurred, that this house, if it was moved to the front, needed something to make it more in fitting with the houses on Bluff Street. If you look at the historic district, there's a different style of housing right on Bluff, and then they get less grand as you get onto the side streets. And they did express support to add a porch feature, which was more in keeping with the Bluff Street district. And then on September 15th, I brought forward to you the request to allocate $150,000 in home funds to this project. And so the resolution explicitly lays out that it's $150,000. And then later in September, Landmarks approved a COA for this project. So what they approved, and I know this is hard to read on a slide, was to demolish 422 Bluff Street and remove the basement, excavate it out and build a new basement for 310 Euclid, move 310 Euclid onto the new basement on the front of the lot, and then add a porch and things, and then construct a garage west of the house, so it'd be a detached garage that you'd access on the side street. And then it also included a new wraparound porch with rounded fiberglass columns, window replacements, roof replacement, a new rear entry, a new kitchen layout, and a small addition to allow for a first floor bathroom. Because the way the house is right now, there is no bathroom on the first floor, and it's not a huge house, so we were trying to make that fit, and it didn't work real well. And so we had AYA drop some designs for us on the porch, which we took to Landmarks Commission, and they approved. So we decided to bid this in 2 phases so that we could, because we felt there was different kinds of contractors that were going to do the different types of work. So we bid the demolition and the move and everything like that. So phase 1, demolish 422 Bluff Street, move 310 Euclid to the front. The low bid was $87,000. Phase 2 was to rehab 310 Euclid once it was moved, to add the architectural details and construct a new garage. The low bid was $192,331. So the bids totaled $279,331. Since the total bids exceeded what the council authorized, I applied for COA to demolish both structures, knowing that we were even going to bring that back forward even if Landmarks approved that. Landmarks approved the COA to demolish 422 Bluff Street, but denied the COA to demolish 310 Euclid. They really wanted me to look at some other options before we went down that path. So we need, because council only authorized $150,000, we do need council action in order to enter into any contracts to do this project at its current costs. If it was approved by you tonight, we would have to either use additional CDBG or CIP funds to complete, because there is a home subsidy limit, and this is a good $50,000 over that. If you don't approve it, we will continue to work with Landmarks Commission to try to resolve this issue and come up with a resolution we can all agree is a good idea. And the options that were proposed by the Landmarks Commission were to rehab it in its current location, to move it to a new foundation closer to the Bluff Street District or on a new off-premise property in or near the Bluff Street District, and sell the house to an investor for $1 who would complete the rehab either at its current location or another location. We did talk to some investors who do this typically, and no one wanted it even for $1. And it is getting worse. I had shared that with Larry, that when we have a new planner who is over the Landmarks Commission, and I took Alex and Drew out, and our area inspector wanted to see it too. So we went out and looked at it, and it is, I mean, as you can expect with a house that's sitting vacant, it's just continues to deteriorate while we're not doing anything with it. So we would like to get resolution so we can kind of move on. And then, do you have any questions for me?
Well, let's see, to get this thing on the discussion board, let's get a motion. We have a motion to approve.
For the sake of it, yes.
Okay.
A motion on the table.
Moved by DeForest. By Kelly. All right, Councilor Kelly.
All right, so as much as I like to have this house fixed up, I understand that this is a lot of money. And, I mean, and I would like to hopefully have it fixed up. But I'm not sure we should commit that kind of money right now for that. So and I know you've been trying really hard for me.
Well, that's my personal thought too, is that, the price is high, we'd like to do something with it, but, going back to the drawing board is a very good idea. Councilor Kincaid.
So are you saying you'd like to talk to staff more about this?
No, I'm saying that
Oh.
I'm not ready to have that house torn down yet. I mean, not 422, but I'm talking about the Euclid house.
310
But
Euclid.
spending that kind of money to fix just that house seems not a good idea.
I agree.
Councilor DeForest.
Thank you. I agree wholeheartedly that it's not worth that money. And I guess, are there any negative consequences for us belaboring this and keep trying to come up with some resolution, some magic resolution that doesn't seem to horizon?
Well, it will continue to deteriorate, but you don't actually have the authority to issue the COA. So, if denied tonight, I will work with Landmarks Commission and do some more work to try to see if there is a solution. But I do believe in my heart of hearts that at the end of the day, we'll be tearing it down, Anna. I'm sorry to tell you that. But, and I think it would be a good idea if Landmarks, someone besides the site review committee, which is two of the people on the board, would actually walk through the house. And I did offer for them to tour it probably 9 months ago, and only the site review committee people came. Okay. So Rick forgot about it at that point. He was on the board then. But I think it would be helpful for them to really walk it and see it inside. Yeah. And they might be interested in seeing the inside of 422 Bluff before we tear it down anyway. So, I mean, maybe we can set up something for them to come out and get a date that works for everybody and go out there. Because now it's light at night, so even if we had to do it after everybody's work hours, we could probably do that. when we did it last time, it was winter. So I think people didn't come out because it was winter and unheated, so.
Do you think it would be helpful for us to provide direction to the Landmarks Commission that we would rather see these home dollars used for a house that might be more doable, realistic, worthy of saving?
I honestly don't know, because I don't deal with landmarks that much. I don't know, Charles, you've been the rep for a long time.
Well, I think if we, a good clear signal is a very good thing.
Okay.
Let's make a signal.
Let's do that.
Let's make a signal.
All right then.
It's getting late.
Exactly. So, do we have any other questions or comments on this
I
item?
guess I do have one as a
Okay.
matter of
Go ahead.
protocol, sorry.
Sure.
So by us voting this down, clearly, I'm saying I do not want the investment made in 310 Euclid, but does this also mean that 422 is not going to get demolished?
No.
Okay.
We will proceed, either way, we would proceed with demolishing 422, but just because the demolition was part of a bigger project, until you denied it, I didn't want to move forward with the demo. So if you guys deny this, then we'll just move forward with the demo of 422 Bluff and get that restored to grass this summer.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, Councilor Kincaid.
Yeah, if we don't want to say no, let's do as little as we can. And if we can knock the building down, so be it. Yeah, let's just is that okay? Oh.
Okay. All right then. Well, I think we've gotten a clear direction here. I'll call the matter. All in favor, say aye.
What is the motion?
Motion is to approve. So all in favor, say aye. All opposed, nay? Nay. Item fails by a vote of 0 to 5. Item B.
Resolution approving a development agreement between the City of Beloit, 200 West Grand Avenue LLC, and East Grand Avenue Development LLC for sale of 80 East Grand and 100 East Grand Avenue.
Good evening. I think I'm going to begin here by giving you a little bit of background on this particular project. This is a multi-property development. It's a little bit complicated, more complicated than most of the projects we bring to you. But the first property, the City of Beloit acquired this property, the property located at 80 and 100 East Grand Avenue, in May of 2009. We purchased it from Kerry. It was a former office space, and we purchased this property as part of a negotiated development agreement that we did with Kerry, part of the deal for them to move their corporate headquarters and research and development out to the Gateway Business Park, and we purchased this property from them for $350,000. When we took title to this property, we also took the liability associated with that particular property. There were some terms and conditions under a settlement agreement that was entered into between the DNR and Kerry in 1999. And some of the key provisions of that agreement included that the owner of that property, which now is us, since we are titled owner of that property, is required to bear the cost of removing that property by December 31st, 2042. We estimated the cost of doing that demolition about 3-4 years ago, and at that time, that cost was estimated at $2 million. So you can imagine anywhere between now and 2042, that cost could only be exorbitantly higher. The building sat vacant after we purchased it until March of 2011, at which point we leased it to Fat Wallet. Fat Wallet is leasing about 60% of the square footage in that building. Fat Wallet has been an outstanding tenant of ours. They've been a great company. They've continued to expand within the footprint of the building. They've added jobs. They're up to 124 on a regular basis. Seasonally, they're up above 160 jobs. And just this past April, Council actually approved a lease extension to Fat Wallet, extending their lease or giving them the option to extend their lease through April of 2019. By doing so, it allows us to retain Fat Wallet again, which has been a great company, a great addition to our downtown and to our economy, and it will provide a really good credit-worthy tenant to the new buyer, which I'm going to get into our proposal to sell this property to a new subsidiary of Hendricks Commercial Properties. So, the deal that we have on the table for you for consideration consideration tonight is Hendricks Commercial Properties is proposing a multi-property redevelopment project, again, involving 2 separate sites in downtown. Site A, as we're referring to Site A, is the former Cary Manufacturing and Research and Development site on West Grand Avenue. Site B is that building that I talked about previously, the former Cary office building on East Grand Avenue, 80 and 100 East Grand Avenue. The improvements that Hendricks Commercial Properties are proposing for Site A include substantial redevelopment to a mixed-use facility. Again, the building had been manufacturing for over 100 years. It's been vacant for almost a decade. They're proposing to repurpose that building completely as a mixed-use development. They haven't exactly pinned down precisely what they're going to do, but again, as a mixed use, it's likely to be a combination of residential and commercial uses. Some of the scope of the work that they're proposing to do includes partial demolition, so some of the existing footprint of the building will be removed, and substantial reconstruction of about 172,000 square feet, which is a significant amount of square footage in our downtown. And again, they're proposing facade renovations of all 4 elevations of the property. Couple slides here just to kind of illustrate some of the potential floor plan options that the developer is considering, as well as a couple elevation renderings that they're proposing. One of the more significant notations here is that they're going to be opening up this facade. A lot of this is currently metal, large planes of metal and large planes of brick that aren't opened up, so they're going to put a lot of windows in here. And as you can imagine, if this is going to be reused as a commercial or residential, they're going to need to add that window space. Another elevation here is being proposed. Site B, which again is the office building at 80 and 100 East Grand Avenue, we're proposing to sell that to the developer for $1. And in turn, the developer is proposing to do a comprehensive facade renovation which will be compatible with the surrounding architecture throughout the downtown. The next several slides here kind of illustrates what they're proposing to do for the elevation improvements. Very similar to the work that they've done at the Phoenix building, but instead of a brand new building, this will be, of course, I think there's actually 3 older existing structures here. Their architect and design team is proposing to kind of break this up to make it appear as if there were 3 or 5 different historic facades here. So different elevations from different views, kind of showing how this building could look physically after they've completed the work here. Between the 2 projects, between Site A and Site B, we're looking at a minimum of $8 million in private investment. They're proposing to create at least 3 new jobs, 3 new businesses being attracted, and creating at least 30 new jobs. A little bit of minutia here. The Hendricks Commercial Properties is going to be creating 2 subsidiaries. One is 200 West Grand Avenue, LLC. They will be the owner and developer of Site A. And another company, East Grand Avenue Development, LLC, which will be the owner and developer of Site B. And both parties are party to the development agreement that you have before you tonight. There are a couple contingencies that are outlined in the contract. First of all, the DNR's approval of the facade renovations that they're proposing at 100 East Grand, which I already showed you. We've had last year some initial discussions with DNR. They were open to the concept, but of course they wanted to see final actual plans. Now that those plans have been completed, we did a joint letter between the city and the developer. We sent that up to the DNR on May 7th, requesting that they approve those facade renovations. So that process is in process. The other contingency is successful due diligence investigation. The developers asked for 90 days in order to complete that due diligence. And of course, the terms and conditions of the lease that we extended and approved back in April, they will inherit those terms and conditions. So Fat Wallet is likely to be a tenant there for a long time. Some of the primary timing components of the project, due diligence again, will be completed in 90 days. Those due diligence costs will be solely borne by the developer. We're to convey Site B, again, which is the office building, to the developer within 45 days of receiving the DNR approval. We don't really know how long that DNR approval process will take, but assume it will take at least probably 60 to 90 days. And then the developer has agreed to begin renovation shortly thereafter and to work diligently to complete the work. One of the key components of the agreement, which I think is really of note, as I mentioned, when we purchased the 100 East Grand building from Cary, we inherited that liability, the cost of removing the river buildings. By transferring title to the new property owner, we are conveying that indemnity and that liability to them. They will be responsible for those costs in the future. Our incentive for the entire project is conveying the building at 100 East Grand for $1. There are no other incentives that we're putting on the table to support this project. And then lastly, I'd like to introduce the person that we've been working with closely, Dan Barkus, who's Vice President for the Midwest region for Hendricks Commercial Properties. He's with us tonight. And if I can answer any questions you might have, I'd be happy to do so. And if you have any questions for Mr. Barkus, he could try to answer those as well.
All right, do we have a motion for approval so we can get this on the table? Moved by Kelly, second by Sloniker. Councilor DeFore.
Thank you. Excuse me, I appreciate you being here to answer any questions we have, and forgive my directness and frankness, but I'm trying to figure out what's in it for the development groups. Knowing that structure will cost several $1 million down the road, so there's a sense that there'll be enough profitability from the repurposing of these sites that will compensate for that. I'm just trying to figure out what's in it for you.
Maybe I can try to answer that question.
Sorry.
The likelihood that the DNR in 2042 will actually require the building to be removed is of some speculation. But I think it's likely, if it's publicly owned, it's owned by the city, it will probably have to come down. And the city will have to, the city's got deep pockets, right? So you will probably have to find a way to remove that property. I think some of the logic from the developer's standpoint is, if the property is privately held, if it is occupied, if there are jobs there, if it's generating tax base, as a private holder of that real estate, it's probably more likely in 2042 that they could go to DNR on or before that date and request a reasonable extension, keeping the real estate active and productive in the marketplace, which is quite frankly what I think our long-range hope would be as well. So does that kind of answer from your perspective? Okay.
All right, thank you.
Mr. President,
Yes.
there's another reason. When the city was first approached by Rob Gerbitz, who's the president of Hendrick Commercial Property, a big area of concern for them was the exterior of the building. They were very interested in the facade and the architecture. They had spent somewhere well north of $6 million doing the Phoenix project. The price tag on the old Beloit Corp campus, the Ironworks campus, has got to be close to $50 million that the Hendricks family have invested in that single property downtown. And we're not even getting to the hotel, the Heritage View building, all the other investments they've made. Many of these investments were very speculative in terms of them ever being profitable. These investments were made by Ken, now Diane Hendricks, very much because of their love for and commitment to the city of Beloit, whom they credited with much of their success in helping them to get started in their ABC building supply business. And so this was another project that fell into that general category of something they wanted to do for Beloit that might not be, certainly wouldn't be profitable anywhere on the near term, and that might turn a profit somewhere into the future. But their primary concern was the facade piece, and they were willing to take on the liability on the 42 demolition in the hopes that they may be able to work something out when that time comes. But in the meantime, this building would be completely upgraded and would have the historic facade put on so it would contribute to the continued historic downtown image and certainly the successful restaurant cluster and business development that's been going on in City Center Beloit.
Help?
Thank you.
All right, Councilor Kincaid.
It sounds like a good thing for Beloit. Having said that, did I hear this would create 30 jobs?
At a minimum.
30?
Yes.
how much is that dollars per job are we talking about? Sounds like a lot of money to me.
Well, and again, the investment is private, $8 million of minimum of private investment.
Yeah, understood.
And when I talk to Dan about, we like, when we do these development agreements, we like to tell council reasonable expectations of what the project might create for overall economic impact. I think they're being very conservative when they say 3 businesses and 30 jobs. It could be much higher than that on how the building is ultimately repurposed. If it's residential, probably not going to have a lot more than 30 jobs. If 200 West Grand is repurposed all as commercial or light industrial, it could be significantly more than 30 jobs.
I think it's a great project. I don't think, we ain't going to audit it.
I think, Mr. President, if I could have one more privilege.
Sure,
for just a second.
go right ahead.
We've alluded to this before, and we've talked extensively about it in the 10-year retrospective that I did on the city center plan and how that was implemented in Beloit. And we talk a lot in that report about the commitment that the Hendricks family has made to City Center Beloit. It's quite extraordinary, and you are absolutely correct. You probably couldn't find, I know for a fact that you could not find a commercial developer anywhere that would take on that West Grand Cary building. I know that for a fact because it's been on the market for 5 years, and they have tried. They have searched everywhere, statewide, nationally. The only company they got that came close to buying it was a salvage firm. They bought it, discovered they couldn't make it pay salvaging it, took what they could out of it and let the shell set. No one else would have picked that up. We're in a city center location. Most of the building is 100 years old. We're miles from an interstate highway. There's no rail access, but this is what the Hendricks development people do. They pick up these older buildings. No one else sees any value. They repurpose them. They put them back in use. And you watch and see in 2 years that building will be beautiful. The site will all be redone. And there will be tenants knocking down their door wanting to lease that space. This is what's been going on all over city centers. So this is nothing unusual for them to come in and propose a project like this that takes on some old buildings that most commercial realtors and developers wouldn't have any. They'll repurpose them and make them successful.
And again, to clarify, that $8 million is private. It's not public dollars. We're not investing a dime. We're not doing any TIF incentives, not any public improvements, not tax credits. It's all private investment.
Well, I'd like to point out that in one of my previous State of the City messages, I had challenged staff and us on the council to find a purpose for the 200 grand building, and I am just doing a happy dance because this is our last Bob downtown, last big old building, and if we can get some mixed use in there, I'm just absolutely thrilled. I think this is great. And to have a different facade than this tin work on the building overhanging the river, that's a great thing too. So I'm thrilled. Do we have any other questions or comments?
Motion.
Yeah, we've already got a motion. So I'll call the matter. All in favor, say aye. 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 Any opposed? Item passes 5-0. Item 11C.
Resolution approving a memorandum of understanding between Beloit College and City of Beloit regarding Powerhouse Riverwalk project.
All right, City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is actually the third time this project has come before council. It was originally envisioned by Beloit College. Dan Schoof, who's here this evening, was very much involved in conceptualizing the idea of actually moving a portion of the downtown, or the riverfront bike ped path along the river, moving it behind the powerhouse project. This was envisioned as part of a plan that Beloit College has been working on with Alliant Energy over about 4 years now, 3 to 4 year period of time, to acquire the old Blackhawk generating station and to convert that into a college facility that would focus on a health club. There would be student union type facilities, indoor workout facilities for the athletic teams, classroom, offices, support space, etc. And this vision is becoming a reality. Hopefully the fundraising will be completed within the next year or two. A piece of the concept was to move the bike traffic to the west side of the building, put it along the river, and so we applied for a grant through the Department of Transportation, what's called a TAP grant, and lo and behold, that grant got approved. And that grant pays 80% of the cost, just over $1 million, and there's the 20% left is about $252,000, split evenly between the city and the college. Earlier this year, you approved a grant or a resolution to begin the design work, and that process has started. The piece that wasn't done was this memorandum of understanding, which is a formal written contract between the city of Beloit and Beloit College that outlines all the terms and conditions of our relationship. Those include collaborating and doing the design for the project. An component of this particular agreement is there are 4+ benchmarks built into this agreement at various stages in the design process where the city and the college will come together. We will do a review of the plan design to that particular point in time, looking again at both feasibility and issues with impact to the building, which the college wants to retain and reuse. And both the city and the college will have to approve the contract, or continuation of the project, I should say, at each step along the way as we do these benchmark reviews. We also we've included a provision in here. The college asked the city to be a 50-50 partner on the local match. We generally agreed with that. We've walked the site. We've validated some cost estimates that were done by the original designers. Our engineers have a level of comfort that we're close on this particular project. However, we wanted to provide some protection in there just in case during the design phase the costs will come in higher than was originally anticipated, and sometimes that happens. You can run into unanticipated problems, issues. This is a relatively unique project. It involves building a structure which will be a bike ped path on the west side of the building. So we are recommending, and the college has agreed, to put in a cap for the city of $250,000, and any cost above that amount would be the responsibility of. I also want to add that both colleges have looked at the project, and our feeling is that value-wise, the local cost maximum would be somewhere in that range. If we get into design, issues come up that weren't anticipated, and this price starts to run, as we did earlier this evening with restoring that house, we will obviously be back to you and likely with a recommendation to cancel the project. This is a very nice project. It will be a wonderful amenity that will enhance the Riverside bike pedestrian trail system, will allow bikers, again, to spend more time right along the river. It will also enhance the usability of the old Blackhawk generating station by taking a lot of the bike traffic off the front of the building, putting it to the back of the building. So it is a great project, but as with all projects, there is a value limit. Right now, we're comfortable that we are close to the original estimates on this project, and the design is proceeding. If anything changes, obviously, we will find that out quickly, and again, we have benchmarks built in that we can review and reject the project if the cost or if any technical design problems start to become an issue. Those are the key components. Nothing has changed in the project. It's the same one you've approved twice before. We're simply going to the third phase now, which is this memorandum of agreement. Call it what you will, but it's a written contractual agreement between the city and the college to guide our actions as we move forward with implementation of this project. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Right, do I have a motion to approve to get this on the table?
So moved.
Moved by Sonaker.
Second.
Second by Kelly. Councilor DeForest.
Thank you. when this was brought to us before, we were told that the city's contribution wouldn't be more than the 100,000, and now we have this contingency cap, which is making me a little nervous in terms of the city's financial liability for this project. And I appreciate the benchmarks, as you call them, that have been put in place for us to kind of check in together with the college to see if this is worth continuing pursuing. I guess a couple of concerns I have that I just wanted to bring up. One is, I'm assuming this will be a CIP budget item, is that correct?
That is correct. I believe it's already in the CIP.
Will this impact the Parks and Recreation budget? Where are we envisioning that?
They won't impact any budget. It's another one among many projects included in the CIP, partially for 17, the construction portion we've already included in the 15 CIP. We amended that for the design work, so that's already included, already been paid for. Okay. At this point, there's nothing that indicates that our cost will be more than the $126,000. Okay. But we're early in the phase of a fairly unique structure, right. Not just paving a bike path. This is constructing a structure. It's like a mini bridge structure in part. Part of it sets on an existing foundation. Part of it will be included in a mini bridge structure that will be independently supported and will take the traffic around the back of the building. Mm-hmm. But it appears at this point that those original cost estimates are reasonably accurate. They incorporated all of the design features that our people have identified that need to be addressed. So right now we're not anticipating that it's going to cost substantially more. But again, the college asked us to do a straight 50-50 match. We still wanted some upside protection, and that's where the $250,000 number came from. It's no different than contingencies we put into our contracts all the time. It provides some upside protection, but we're still looking at the current cost estimate of 126 as being approximately where we're going to end up.
So just to follow up, because this will be considered part of, because we are taking over maintenance, so it'll be considered part of our pedestrian and bike trails. So I just want to make sure that that's not going to negatively impact our Parks and Recreation budget. We're not going to take a ding in that budget to cover this expense, is what you're saying. Just want to make sure that's clear.
Not envisioned. I don't know what it would be. This will be part of the CIP budget. The Parks budget will be, evaluated separately based on the recommendation we receive each year from the Parks and Leisure Services Committee.
Okay. And then my other concern is related to what you had brought up, which I expressed when this first came to us several months ago. My concern about, because this is such an unusual project, we are in effect constructing a bridge walkway because we're trying to fix it to a building that the college has done some due diligence to see what we're kind of looking at here for a very old building to construct that. Since we are taking over the maintenance of that, are we also taking over the liability as well in terms of it being a unique bridge structure? And do we foresee any problems with that?
There's no liability here. Anything different than we have on any of our other bike paths is the only liability. We're incorporating this into the building project. We're not taking a role in the building project. That's strictly the college, and they have a written agreement with Alliant Energy that specifies the terms and conditions for the brownfield cleanup. So the only liability we would have on this is the same we have on all of our bike ped paths. It's kind of your recreational, it's covered by your recreational immunity. But, if there's something on there that happens.
Okay, and then do we have any sense of the anticipated cost of the easements? Is this, because I'm worried that this is an unpredictable wild card?
No, there were some projections built into the original budget for that. We need just a small easement. Actually, it's more of an air easement where we'll be elevated as we go in front of the dam operating building. Mm-hmm. We'll be elevated over their doors so we won't interfere with any of their operations. And they'll have full access 24/7. So we're not anticipating that being a major problem. I know the engineers to the company, they're indicating that they would be cooperative. They think it's a neat project as well.
So we don't anticipate any issues with the dam owner?
Not at this time. They've been briefed. We've talked to the dam operator. I was out there in person. We went out and walked the entire project to make sure this was viable, that you could actually build a bike path there before we got too far into this.
Our engineers went back and talked to the original designers that did the conceptual drawing that was used in the grant. They were comfortable that the original designers had covered everything. So at this point, there are no major known problems with the project, otherwise we wouldn't be here. And again, there are benchmarks built into the agreement, so if we get into design and something pops up that we didn't anticipate, we have a back door.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. All right. Do we have any other questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll call the matter. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item passes 5-0. Item 11D.
Resolution approving a landfill disposal agreement between the City of Janesville and the City of Beloit.
Ms. Walsh.
Good evening. Right. So just a little bit of overview on this. October of 2005, the city entered into a 10-year contract with Mallard Ridge to dispose of both our residential trash and some inorganic matter from the wastewater treatment plant. The agreement is going to expire on September 30th of this year, and currently the city is paying Mallard Ridge landfill $32.68 per ton. The issues were on February 6th of 15, Janesville City Manager Mark Freitag proposing the cities enter into an intergovernmental agreement to dispose of solid waste. With this agreement, the city would realize a savings of almost $187,000 in the first 5 years of the agreement, if we compared it to our current rate of $32.68. And that would be making an assumption Mallard Ridge would stay at that rate for the next 5 years. This agreement would further bolster the intergovernmental cooperative relationship that exists between Janesville and Beloit. I think it is important to have economic stability for a local landfill. I think it is very beneficial to the city and to this region. This type of cooperative agreement is really a win-win for both cities. We save money and the city of Janesville increases their revenues at the landfill. In conformance to the strategic plan, in reviewing those, I saw 2 of your strategic goals. As an eco-friendly municipality, focus on the sustainable stewardship of city resources, services, and infrastructure to protect both our built and natural environment and enhance the quality of life for current and future generations. And second, to communicate and partner with other jurisdictions and organizations to coordinate effective and efficient service delivery and stimulate regional prosperity. And clearly this project supports both sustainable stewardship of resources and a partnership with Janesville to promote a win-win. Sustainability, our semi will be driving less miles per year at a savings actually of about a little over $4,000 of diesel, which would further reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 29,247 pounds annually, calculated through the SMART grant fleet that we have, and reduce dependence on activities. Janesville landfill is licensed and monitored by the State of Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources to prevent harm, and meeting hierarchy of present and future needs. I believe this agreement protects the region's ability to have landfill options, so there's not just one landfill within our area. Staff recommends that council vote in favor of authorizing the city manager with entering into a landfill disposal agreement between the city of Beloit and Janesville. 5 years projected landfill savings of approximately $187,000. John Whitcomb is sitting up and back, and he is the operations director for the city of Janesville. So if you have any questions for me or for John back there.
Thank you. All right, do we have a motion for approval? Moved by Kincaid, second by Sloniker. Counselor DeForest?
Thank you. I know that this was presented to us in a workshop before, so most of my questions were answered there. I want to make sure, because I guess it just occurred to me, all of the state fees will be passed through onto us. Do we see that that could affect our savings because we're using the landfill in Wisconsin?
No.
Okay.
That $13 charge that you're talking about, the fee, that is no matter where we go to in Wisconsin.
It's not geographic, okay.
No, you have to pay it.
Geographically bound, okay. And then, liability is my theme tonight, but I want to make sure that we won't be held liable for any issues at it's the Janesville landfill, correct? We're just basically paying tipping fees, is that correct?
Correct, and Beth had drafted the indemnification for both cities.
Yeah, we have protection. We are not responsible for it. We are just a customer of the city of Janesville using their landfill.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. I have to protect the city, so thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll call the matter. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item passes 5-0. Item 12 is adjournment. Do I have a motion? Moved by Sloniker, second by Kincaid. All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned. Yep.